What's up, my brothers and my sisters from another mister? So today we're going to do a full story review of Spawn, Blood Feud, issues number 1 through 4. This is a shocking revelation where innocent Spawn is wanted for murders, and it also will unveil the alien truth behind his costume. Brought to you by RatedComics. Now, before we go into the content, link in description if you wish to purchase this comic book or some of our RatedComics exclusives, perhaps both, to add to your comic book collection. Support the art, support the industry. Timestamps will also be in description if you wish to go from issue to issue. Lastly, if you like the content we're throwing up, do me a favor, like the video and subscribe to RatedComics YouTube channel, and it will also help us to make more content like this. With all that being said, let's get into the content, man. I guess I'm where I've always been, somewhere between the devil and the deep blue sea. So Spawn affirms as he yet again finds himself shunned and betrayed by everyone around him. It has been almost 28 years since the first volume of Alan Moore's Spawn, Blood Feud, was released, and over 3 decades since Spawn character entered the world of comics. From various sequels and spin-offs to crossovers, this series has seen plenty of colors, but in my opinion, this Spawn, Blood Feud spin-off has kind of remained hidden in the background, which sucks because despite its relatively straightforward premise, the art is pretty good and gangsta, and thematic value is commendable, and the comic in and of itself is genuinely a good read. The story starts with 2 youngsters just chit-chatting on the rooftop. One says she's going vegetarian while the other talks about the natural order of the food chain. Unfortunately, they are both just straight up butchered before the conversation progresses any further. We don't know who killed him or how, it just happened, and it happened pretty quickly, instantaneously. The rest of the family shows up to see what the racket is all about, and while the father does get his gun, it's too late for the bro. They suffered the same fate. What the heck happened? Elsewhere, we see the good old Al Simmons, aka Spawn. He is having what you called an episode, just a random blackout. So voices in his head muttering poetry and a monster in front. Safe to call it a dream or hallucination perhaps. Others in the back alley call his name and ask him if he's alright. But as it usually happens in situations like this, our boy wants to be left alone. Now, about what happened at the rooftop. Detectives and reporters have started talking and taking notes of the situation. The report concludes that the whole attack, or whatever it was, took only 30 seconds. And in just those 30 seconds, those people were destroyed. Because of the absolute abnormality of the incident, the department has hired a freelance paranormal crime specialist. He will come and clear things up. But back to Spawn. He is in a very serious one-sided conversation with this cape. He knows that it is what has been causing his blackouts, but what is it exactly and how? That's the question. Does it experience pain? Does it dream? But the most important question is, what does this creature get its energy from? Where? How? As Spawn continues the interrogation, his back alley fellows look at him with silent, sus eyes. Anyways, that freelancer is here. His name is John Sangster, and he is the specialist who's going to take care of the recent fiasco in the city, and looks like nobody has any reason to doubt his competence because the man looks like a freaking tank. He's huge! During the press conference, he addresses everyone and mentions that the problem is supernatural beings, or vampires to be more precise. But here's where it gets interesting. This absolute giant of a man goes on to show everyone a picture on a projector. You guessed it, it's our boy Spawn. Sangster reveals that he has been observing this creature for a while now. He also mentions Spawn's thick costume, how it essentially protects him from the sunlight. He goes on to state that this shot of the creature was taken at a graveyard. There are reasons to believe that this is where his mortal body is buried. Exactly. When he shows Spawn without his mask, he tells him to notice the decay on his face. Sangster explains that the experience of death is what drives these creatures insane. They often have delusions, but that's just their minds refusing to acknowledge the awful truth about who they really are. But he knows what they are. He knows who they are. So he alleges, and he knows what to do with them, which I'm not gonna doubt that. This brother looks like he's no joke. Sangster's detailed speech leads to the implementations of a few steps to weed the creature out. Since these creatures don't like the light, they implement ground and air surveillance. Because the creatures also try to avoid the light of publicity, a mass public information campaign takes place. TV spots, flyers, posters, all that. The press is quick to spread the word. but they are also careful with the wording. Instead of calling the creature, which is obviously Spawn, a vampire, they're going to use a more sophisticated term, which is extra normal hazard. Sangster continues and says that sooner or later, this will attract the attention of the creature itself. And sure enough, we see Spawn reading a flyer and going bonkers over how they are calling him some sort of monster or something. He rips the flyer apart, rants about how he saves a stupid pest hole when suddenly that voice starts speaking to him again. She introduces herself as K7 Letha, daughter of the 7th house of K, and starts her poetry again. This gives Spawn an awful migraine and he begins to lose control over himself again. Next thing we see, random people are getting butchered the same way as the Rooftop family before in the beginning of this issue. The blood dissipates and we see Spawn again. He is hallucinating. When he regains his consciousness, we see him on the street right next to the corpse of a young lady. It doesn't matter who. Anywho, anyone who would have walked in on that scene would have immediately labeled him as the perpetrator. It's his fault. He's guilty as charged. This is what happens to Spawn. He has been caught red-handed, literally. Now moving on to issue number 2, we see Spawn fleeing the scene as the police open fire. There are at least 10 dead, mutilated corpses at the scene of the slaughter, and he is running away from it right now. Get the hell away, don't nobody want me like that, I gotta figure out my own stuff. It's gonna be hard for him to talk his way out of this one. The news of his sighting quickly spreads around. He has been labeled a devil. The reporters ask Mr. Sangster about what they are dealing with exactly. Mr. Sangster enjoys his terminologies. He talks about how when dealing with extra normal hazards, they are by definition exploring the unknown. The reporter reminds him of how he previously called the creature a vampire, but Mr. Sangster whispers to him that he doesn't want to use the V word as that may create a mass panic and pandemonium. But the man makes one thing clear. Yesterday, the creature took 5 lives. Today, he took 10. Tomorrow, he may take 20 lives. And it is his job to prevent that. To that end, he is okay with ending the creature's life, or so he says. Meanwhile, Spawn shows up at his old buddy Sonny's place. He is experiencing several mental dilemmas all at once and is also starting to believe that he is the one behind all the incidents, all the murders, and then proceeds to pour a cup of coffee. Mr. Sangster and the detectives brace themselves for the confrontation that's about to happen later. The detective does ask Mr. Sangster a good question. If this guy Spawn is really a vampire, why aren't the victims ever drained of the blood? Mr. Sangster shrugs him off by mentioning the blood bank and that was robbed tonight as well. It may be connected. But back to Sonny and Spawn. Our boy is so grateful to Sonny, he thought he had no friends left in the world, but thankfully, Sonny still trusts him. Realizing this, Spawn talks about how he hasn't been himself lately, and how he may have been involved with the incidences earlier after all. But Sonny obviously doesn't take him seriously. It is to keep him there all relaxed until the detective and Sangster arrive. You know, keep his guard down, so to speak. They have a casual conversation about old times, but Sonny slips and Spawn realizes that he was in with the police. Though, just as Sonny apologizes and explains that he had his reasons, Sangster is here. It is a brutal showdown. This Sangster bro is a lot tougher than what I thought, than what Spawn thought. He looks freaking demonic. Letha's voice keeps talking to Spawn during the fight. It is poetic, but she's giving him instructions, telling him to retreat, back up, you don't know him like that, that's my poetry. Sangster succeeds in getting a hold of Spawn and his cape. He expresses disappointment. He talks about how he's going to send Spawn right back to where he came from, but the cape, the costume acts on its own and helps Spawn only to break free, but this also stuns Sangster for a moment. Spawn succeeds in escaping. He heads to the dock and despite Letha's reservations, he starts undressing himself, unsymbioting himself, taking off that symbiote. He doesn't want it no more. And yo, that kind of didn't came out right, but whatever, man. He starts ripping it apart and Letha struggles. He also gets help from a familiar and finally manages to take it off entirely. It does come off at the cost of severe injuries, but he could just heal himself if he so chooses. The problem though, the costume is finally off. He locks it into his safe and throws away the key and throws it in the ocean, so to speak. No, he literally does throw it in the ocean. Spawn goes back, tells the boys to get him some cushions so that he can get some good sleep on his throne. He is clearly not in a good mood. Meanwhile, in the sea, K7 Letha manages to break free. Spawn immediately realizes because the two of them share the same consciousness. She reveals that the two of them are one and the same, which is why it wasn't her whom he drowned, it was himself. He then suddenly wakes up because of the immense pain in his chest. Looks like he was stabbed by his own people. This is the point where the second issue concludes, but the story continues in the third issue. The third issue starts with Spawn, or should I say Al, trying to understand why his own boys have turned on him. They proceed to talk down to him, spread some gasoline on him, and then literally light him on fire. Spawn runs. He runs towards the docks. Everyone has turned on him, even these bums. Guess he is right where he has always been, between the devil and the deep blue sea. And as he is submerging into the water, Letha reminds him. She reminds him that this is exactly what he did to her. He ripped her apart and threw her into the ocean. Now Spawn is experiencing that same feeling of getting rejected. She then calls herself Spawn's blonde bride and declares herself a part of him. It's like love. But like love, it's supposed to last forever and it's supposed to be real. Supposed to. That's what she claims the symbiote was to him. Or supposed to be anyways. It's kind of poetry here. When Spawn comes out the water and his bride's voice has stopped, he decides to hide in the sewage, dumping toxic waste in the ocean. This is somewhere so wretched that not even the lowest vermin will look for him there. Or so he thinks. Once inside the sewage, he sees a familiar face. It's the Violator. Now what? Lucky for Spawn, Violator pulls out the stick Spawn was stabbed with. It hurts like hell, but at least the Violator is helping him out. Turns out the two of them are in the same boat. He has too been classified as an extra normal hazard too. Violator mentions that this Sangster guy is trouble, but unlike him or Spawn, Sangster is not from hell. He is just gonna change his address and go with a new identity. He will be fine. So Spawn tells the Violator about how he got rid of the costume and all that vampire shtick, but Violator explains that his costume feeds off the souls, not blood. This makes Spawn wonder, if not the suit, maybe he is the vampire because he was bit by one. So Spawn's trying to connect, well, if I didn't kill all those murders and my suit is not attracted to blood, it's attracted to souls, then it's gotta be me as the vampire. But nah, Spawn, you're dead. Vampire bites only affect living tissue and you're dead, Spawn, so vampire bites do not affect you. Anyway, Violator bails out, but he was able to give Spawn some clarity. Meanwhile, Twitch is looking into Mr. Sangster when he finds something very interesting about the man's past. He looked the same back in 1952 and even looked the same back in the 18th century. They are records of his existence. He goes by the name of John Sancour. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, that's a French name of course. And yes, the guy's jig is up. Mr. Sangster is the vampire. And now that Twitch has found that out, well, he found that out a little bit too late of course, he is disposed of by the man himself right away. Spawn, on the other hand, is wondering about his costume. Oh, he gets himself one of the old dumped cars, uses his powers to get it running, and is on the way to somewhere else, another sewage basically, who knows. But back to John Sangster, Detective Sam Burke shows up and tells him that Spawn has been spotted driving the car. The detective obviously has no idea that the real perpetrator is Sangster himself. His curiosity after seeing a blood trail does lead him to discovering the Twitch's mutilated blood corpse, his partner. It is kind of an eyesore, but we have to just take it in for a moment because, yo, that is pretty brutal right there. Now, Sangster quickly heads to the scene and shamelessly interrupts Spawn's driving. He lands, rips off the roof because it ain't on fire. He just gotta go in and get at Spawn. He is, and he greets our boy with the brutal punch. He expresses his disappointment regarding Spawn again, disfigures the car, pretty much tears the car apart, just so he could trap Spawn and then lets it go straight into the ocean. He is sending Spawn straight to hell and he wants Spawn to tell them that Heartless John sends his regards. And that is the end of this issue of Spawn Blood Feud issue number 3. Okay, so the third issue ended with Spawn sinking deep into the ocean. He has a monologue. It is always night down here. Not Monday night or Tuesday night, just night. Cold, wonderful, and endless. You could just forget yourselves forever. Isn't that a beautiful idea? No more loved ones to have or to lose. No more friends to let you down or turn on you. All you have to do is open your mouth and breathe in. No more world to break your heart. No more false dawns, only nights. Though that's when he recalls her voice and remembers. The media, the police, his own friends and bums, everyone in the world turned on him, but she was there. Yeah, that's right. Unlike everyone else, Letha is the only one who needs him, and so he needs her. So he goes after her, while John Sinclair, and if I'm butchering that French name, I apologize, or Johnson Carrera, I don't know. Whatever it is, Sangster reveals his true colors to the detective and talks about how he has been around since the 11th century. Spawn goes deep into the ocean waves to find and recover Letha. Soon, they'll be together. Then, they'll be reckoning. As Sangster murders police officers and goes ham on them in the most brutal and savage way, Spawn succeeds in reuniting with his darling. He returns right when Sandberg is about to lose his life to Sangster. He tells him to put down the detective and then asks a sincere question. It wasn't much, but Spawn still had a life, but Sangster took it. He wants to know why, but Sangster is just way too excited. His plan with all this monster hunting, first Violator and now Spawn, was to make the city his own and then make it a base for the vampires. He'll be their leader. Spawn is pissed off at Sangster. He wants action, he's going in, and he wants that smoke. Spawn is about to go all out, which causes Sangster to change his form. He transforms into this heinous monstrosity. I mean, just look at him, bruh. Their battle is beef because the sun soon enters the chat, but it doesn't seem like much of a concern to Sangster because he simply transforms himself into a reptile and states that there is a change in his travel plans. He tells Spawn how everyone will continue to think that he is the vampire, and then Sangster makes his escape from the sunlight through the gutter. Fortunately, there was still the detective, Detective Sandberg. The detective was still alive. He even tells Spawn that after some questioning, they could put this straight, but no, it's too late for Spawn. Sangster was right. Everyone he had is gone. There is nothing left for our boy. No reason to remain here in the world of day and night when everything the sun reveals just shows him what he has lost. But the dark is like a mother. It'll soothe him. The dark will take away the pain from our boy Spawn. It's always night down here, after all. Spawn Blood Feud was a raw yet straightforward glimpse of what it is actually like to be Spawn. John Sangster didn't mess it all up. His involvement just showed him the true reality of it all. Spawn, for what it's worth, is simply unable to dwell in the light, and I think this is an amazing story. I absolutely love this story, and I hope you guys enjoy this too. If you guys like the content we're throwing up, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to RatedComics YouTube channel. Also, link in description if you wish to add this comic book and or some of our Rated Comics exclusives to your comic book collection. Support the art, support the industry. Lastly, this review is sponsored by coffee, so if you'd like to buy your boy a cup of coffee, link in description or donate to the super thanks. But the greatest compliment you guys can do is by liking this video and subscribing to Rated Comics YouTube channel. Thank you again for watching. Until next time.